What's up, everybody? This is Sequel Seku. Thank you so much for joining me on my YouTube channel. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. Today's video, we're going to talk through calculation groups and how you can do some cool stuff with it. So on this page, calculation groups came out for public preview within Power BI in October 16th, 2023. So they've been out a while with Tabular Editor 2, 3, but they're now natively available in Power BI. So I'll be the first to admit that I was actually late to get into calculation groups, and I'm sure there's so much cool stuff that you can do. I did pass the Microsoft Fabric exam, and there's stuff that I studied about with Tabular Editor that's amazing, but I am late to the game with calculation groups, so even myself, I'm still learning what's going on, but I've been doing some really cool things. If you haven't already, there's a link out there that shows what calculation groups is and what you can do. So this has been my starting point, and I've gone down to pretty much doing the year-to-date type of calculations. So whether it's looking at month to date, how to do month to date, Q to date, year to date, this is pretty much my starting point of how to create the calculation groups. The problem I was facing when I was doing the calculation groups is that when I selected it, I actually wanted the month itself to only be displayed. So if I select month to date, I only want to see April, for example. Or if I select quarter to date, I only want to see the most recent quarter that I'm selecting. Same thing for year to date. So when I was using what was on the default template of using month to date and the default calculations, when I select month to date, my KPI itself would show the last total. So I would see 769 or 6828 for the month to date, but my actual dates were not filtering down. And so I wanted to make sure when I actually selected the month that my date would also adjust as well. And so what I found is that I would do that. My KPI again would adjust. My year-to-date information would adjust. But again, my totals, my dates would not filter. So what I ended up doing was messing around with Keepfilters. Keepfilters is a really cool function that is available for you to use. So within the context of calculate, Keepfilter basically overrides the context of calculate and calculate table to override the standard behavior of these functions. I'm not a DAX expert. I do have the book behind me. I'm still learning like the best way to do this. But for my particular use case, I found that using Keepfilters and then adding the context for what I wanted gave me the solution that I needed. So let's go ahead and walk into Power BI and figure out how I did that. So if we go into our calculation group, we see that we have our calculation. The default one is based on what I was selecting. You have selected measure and then dates, month to date. What I ended up doing to order to get the syntax that I wanted, again, this is me hard coding some of this, but for this example for month to date, I just put the syntax that I needed. So for this example, I just have date equals 2024, and then the max date of today, and then less than or equal to today. The reason that I did that is my data set has data that is longer and adjusted just for the sake of an example that goes into the end of 2024. So for month to date, I made sure that I added this less than or equal to today to make sure that I had today's date information, and then that is only looking at today's month and then year combination as well. So when I do that, when we go back into month to date, as I talked about earlier, my dates were not adjusting, but now if I select month to date, we see now that my actual date is adjusting. If we go back into quarter to date adjusted, we'll see that I'm doing a similar concept here as well. So I'm doing year, and then quarter, and then date, and then less than or equal to today. So we see that we're doing the exact same thing here, and that is working like we would expect it to work. So if I go back into quarter to date adjusted, because we're in April, right, it's the start of the month. So once we get June and July information in here, we'll have that. And of note, the reason why I have this is my date table only goes into today as well. So if you do have a date table that goes into the future and you might have futuristic dates, then you'll see the information, but my actual date table only goes to April 3rd. So that's why I only can see today's month, because my date table only goes into today. So just a heads up there. Another way that I think is really powerful that you can use is if you have offsets. So if you have offsets in your date table, you can leverage that in your filter complex, in your filter as well. So in this example, I do have a year offset equals 0. So basically when the year, this column in my date field equals 0, I can just say that I automatically know that it's this current year. So this is a way of actually dynamically doing this, which I actually highly recommend if you don't have any issues with your date table. Let's say that again. So really, this is a way I actually really recommend, because it is dynamic and it does lead you to develop it once, and then you always know that this is your current year. So just to give you a look and feel of what the date table looks like, we see that we have columns of day offset, week offset, month offset, quarter offset, and year offset in our date table. And as we see that we have 0 selected here, and that means that we know that it is 2024. So just using that in our keep filters context allows us to dynamically adjust this. So when we go back to our page, if we select year to date adjusted, we see that we have our year to date information selected. So this is how we can do this with calculation groups to give the user feel. So let's get into what an actual dashboard could look like. So the dashboard itself, right, as we look at this, we just have simple 2 KPIs. We have total sales and total profit, and then we just have some trending information below it. But what I wanted to do is give the user the ability to select the calculation group that I have, and it adjusts the chart below it. So by using what was there, we have just month to date information, and that's fine. But we see the chart itself isn't adjusted. So if we go to the new syntax that we created, we see now the actual chart is adjusting to what the selection is. Same thing for quarter to date. Using the total quarter to date default functionality, we see that our chart isn't doing really what we want. But we go to quarter to date adjusted, we see that it is adjusting. And then same thing for year to date adjusted as well. So this is how I found how to solve this piece of filtering down on the actual dates itself to show only what you want and do it once. So are you using a different technique? This is what I found, but hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you're using calculation groups, anything besides keep filters, to be able to show the dates that you want in your visuals. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe. We'll talk to y'all next week. Have a great day.